And away we go. It's the DFS Alert presented by Awesemo.com, brought to you in part by Superdraft. We'll talk about them momentarily. Dan Strafford, Adam Scherer with you on this Thursday morning, getting ready for a 4-game. Listen, it's not a pretty slate. I'm not going to pull punches here. I'm not going to try to dress this up. It's wearing its Sunday's best, but the Sunday's best is like torn and tattered and shouldn't be worn anymore. What seems like could be 4 or at least 3 lopsided games. We'll get to some injuries here, Adam, that could make the Knicks 76ers game a little bit more interesting. But first and foremost, as I always like to ask, how the hell are you doing?
Doing good. Kind of annoyed with how the Spurs went.
Sure.
I put myself in a situation where I knew I was going to be mad no matter what. Like I swapped a lot of my Jakob Poeltl to Lonnie Walker. And at first I was mad at myself for doing that. And then now I'm mad at myself for in my higher stake stuff. I just stuck with Jakob Poeltl, and I wish I had Lonnie Walker. So kind of put myself in a lose-lose situation and not real happy about that.
As many in DFS can empathize with, you've been popped. It is not all that surprising. Even in off years, Greg Popovich enjoys having some fun with his lineups. Aldridge out. Everyone, I think Poeltl was projected at like 78% ownership. I don't know what he actually went off at.
He came in lower stakes on DraftKings. He was around 60. At higher stakes, he was around 70.
Wow. That's something to think about, like as February, March on. So
the thing was, like, we got the news before lock. It was just, what do you do with it? Because if you think, and I was talking to people on Twitter that, I respect, and we were just kind of talking about the different things to think about, and it's, you have, I think that even with Poeltl coming off the bench, he projected better than Walker.
Sure.
Because granted, he didn't play at all in the second half, as it turns out, but I expected him to play at least like 20 minutes. And I expected Walker to play around 28, and Poeltl's the better permanent guy.
Yep.
But you still get into, once he comes off the bench, there is more risk, as you saw with him not playing in the second half. And he's going to be like 70% owned, whereas Walker's going to be, depending, higher stakes, he was 10, lower stakes, he was 3. So even if you do project Poeltl higher, there's still merit to switching to Walker. So it made it a really, really interesting slate. And, like I said, I kind of had a feeling that I was going to be mad at myself one way or the other, and it happened.
Being it's a 4-game slate, I feel like we can take 30 seconds more here. Was it a conscious decision to maybe take the higher stakes at a certain with Poeltl because of ownership, because of that, and then lower stakes take the risk on of Lonnie Walker at a lower ownership?
Yeah. So what I did was because late swapping is always, I think, a difficult process to do across a lot of lineups. And so what I ended up doing was I decided that I would, obviously I had Jakob Poeltl in the utility in some lineups, and I had him in center in some lineups because I had about 100%. So I decided that where I had him at center, I would keep him at center. Where I had him at utility, I would swap him to Walker, which I knew would give me, somewhere around like 40% Walker. But then in my higher stake stuff, like I had 10 lineups tonight in the $222 on DraftKings. I knew that more people would swap to Walker. So since I thought that Poeltl was the higher projected guy, I decided to just keep my Poeltl there, because, Walker was still only 10%, but 10% versus 3% on a guy that I still expected to score around 20 points wasn't, I felt like I was better off taking the ceiling from Poeltl.
The volatility of Lonnie Walker at higher ownership, whether, at least double digit at that point at 10%.
And the other thing for me was that in my higher stakes lineups, I already had some lower owned guys doing well. I had lineups that had Karis LeVert and Malik Beasley that were both doing really well. So it was kind of just like, I don't want to lose because I don't want to not win. I don't even care about losing. I don't want to not win because I go to a guy that I think is a worse play just because he's lower owned when I have a lineup that's already doing really, really well with low-owned guys.
Well, that's a great point, that you already had exposure to low-owned guys, already had that sort of going for you, as it were. So things to consider, not saying Adam's experience here is any way indicative of how you should play a 4-game slate or a 9-game slate or news like this in the future, but always at least intriguing to understand, one, Adam, why you make the decisions you do, other than, just the wing and the prayer that I know you actually go about your business.
Let's not kid ourselves. I'd already had 4 beers at the bar and was just on my phone clicking buttons.
You're like, this guy on the end of the bench, he may get 4 minutes. This could be the night, guys.
Lonnie Walker's gonna be 3%. This other guy's gonna be 1.
Exactly. It's game on. We are going to dive into, and I guess the news of the night here in the NBA is that Joel Embiid only played 8 minutes in the 76ers contest on a Wednesday night. He is going for an MRI on Thursday. I don't see any way he plays Thursday night. The 76ers are already without Ben Simmons. This has been a bit of a train wreck of a year for the 76ers. Expectations were high. They brought in Al Horford. Josh Richardson is there. They made these trades for Burks, or the trade for Burks and for Glenn Robinson. They're not saying they are difference makers, but there was some intent here from the 76ers front office to make a run this year. They see their window. And now if Embiid is out for any stretch of time that is significant, it would feel as though the wheels could come off very quickly for the 76ers. Now, luckily for them, it is the New York Knicks, who quite potentially are the worst NBA franchise going right now. But this is a game all of a sudden on a slate that has Portland, Indiana, Sacramento, Oklahoma City, and Lakers, Golden State. All three could be fairly lopsided when we go by lines. This game at least enters into some interesting discussion points. You have Alfred Payton, RJ Barrett, Shake Milton is 4,700. We know DK does some price reductions on smaller slates. Dennis Smith Jr. is down at 4,200. You look at shooting guards, Josh Richardson's just 53. Tobias Harris is at 75. Julius Randle's just 7,800. Al Horford is just 5,200. Could get a big start here. All of a sudden, Adam, this game, unfortunately, becomes one that probably will be a focal point here. How does it break down for you, and what do you see as some of the most important things to consider?
Yeah, I mean, I think, assuming Embiid sits, obviously you're getting a lot of really good value against the Knicks. To take one step back, you mentioned that there are some potentially lopsided games on this slate. I'm normally not a huge advocate for game stacking, but it obviously becomes more appealing on smaller slates. And it also becomes more appealing whenever you have a number of games that could vary, where like the better team is at home.
Yep.
And that's clearly the case on this slate, where even you have a watered down Philadelphia team, but they're still facing the Knicks. OKC at home against the Kings, Indiana at home against the Blazers, the Lakers at Golden State, but it doesn't matter because the Lakers are so much better than Golden State. From a strategy standpoint, if you wanted to just like game stack all of your lineups on this slate, if you're ever going to do it on a 4-game slate, it's on a slate like this. But getting back to this game, obviously, if Embiid's out, Horford becomes a lot more appealing. He's not going to he's not priced like Embiid is out. He's not been very good this year, but a lot of that really has to do with playing alongside Embiid. So if he's out and he's only 5,200 on DraftKings, you expect Horford's going to be one of the better plays on the slate. Not a big sample size this year of Simmons and Embiid being off the floor, since they tend to stagger their minutes. But you do have 179 minutes of Horford, averaging 1.13 DraftKings points per minute. Tobias Harris at 1.17 with a 27% usage rate. Josh Richardson has a 26.4% usage rate in 175 minutes. So, I mean, obviously, without either of these players, you're just going to get a ton more usage for guys like Harris, Richardson, Horford. And then the secondary guys like Furkan Korkmaz, who should get 20, probably 26 to 28 minutes. Shake Milton should get more usage. Alec Burks should get more usage. So it really, if Embiid is out, it's just going to be, getting a lot of Sixers in your lineup.
I know Horford is a very good defender. Any love for a Julius Randle here, or any of the Knicks guards that could potentially give you some cheap upside offense on this short slate?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm trying to figure out even what injuries are going on with the Knicks, but
Ntilikina, I believe, is out. No, Ntilikina was out Wednesday night.
Yeah, he was out Wednesday, so he's questionable here, but Peyton's back. Yeah, so Randall is pretty much always the one guy that I'm interested in from the Knicks. When it gets to guys like Alfred Payton, RJ Barrett, Mitchell Robinson, you can obviously roll the dice in larger field tournaments, especially on a 4-game slate where there's limited low-owned high upside guys to get to. But Julius Randle will be the one that stands out. He's down to 7,800 on DraftKings. I don't know if that's because of the back-to-back, because they're playing Philly, but
it's the short slate. It's DK. I think it's DraftKings not arbitrarily. That's the wrong word. It is DK making the decision to drop prices here.
I agree.
I would say
the rest of the Knicks are still where they should be.
That's fair.
Like Peyton's still 7K, or Barrett's 5,800, Robinson's 5K. So like even relative to the Knicks, I think Randall is cheaper than normal. But without Embiid and against Horford is a good defender, like you said, but I think that Randall just gives you a lot of upside. Usage rates up north of 30% without Marcus Morris this year. So he'd be the one guy that stands out from the Knicks.
All right. I will point out, and I saw this before and did not mention at the top, LeBron's going to be out Thursday night.
Yep.
So we do want to take that into consideration. We'll talk about the Lakers Golden State at the end, but I just did want to make that as a point of reference here as we talk about these other games. It's not influencing the line. I mean, the Lakers are still minus 13.5 in the three books that have lines out right now without LeBron. Like take that into consideration for a second, but we'll talk about that in a few moments. Up next is Portland and Indiana. This is a Portland team that has struggled, a ton without Lillard in the lineup. He's traveling. He's not going to be playing Thursday night. It could be this third game of this 3-game road trip that Lillard gets back in there. McCollum's up to 9K. You do have Victor Oladipo with a Q tag with that back injury he's dealing with. He's at 6,200. Brogdon's at 7,300. So maybe not the big discounts I may have mentioned because of the short slate from DK. Clearly, Jeremy Lamb still out for the year for the Pacers. What do you like here? There seems to be some pieces that might have some upside, but where do you think they all fall into place?
Yeah, so I think that the last game was a bad indicator of what to expect from Indiana going forward. Oladipo obviously is the big question mark. If he's out, you're probably going to get Aaron Holiday starting again. He's still pretty cheap, sub 5K on DraftKings, and going to probably play north of 30 minutes against Portland in a good matchup. So he would look like a really good option if Oladipo is out. Miles Turner's still only 5,200. I'm really interested to see what his ownership looks like because he was about 40% owned on a 7-game slate against Charlotte. Yeah, it was a good matchup. He came through. He had 6 points and 10 rebounds, which normally if you fade that at 40% ownership, you're happy. Came through with 8 blocks and 2 steals. So I assume he's going to be really, really popular here. And I think he should be popular at this price point because Lamb and potentially Oladipo being out does solidify his minutes. But at the same time, you're still most likely looking at like 32 to 34 minutes, and you're not counting on 20 points from steals and blocks again. So I think he is a good point per dollar play. I think he's a great cash play. I think he's a high upside tournament play if you're contrarian somewhere else in your lineup. But like if Oladipo is out, I think there's a pretty good chance that Turner is probably higher owned than he should be.
Makes sense, and I think one that will be considered. What about from the Portland Trailblazers perspective? Lillard out, McCollum though is 9K. Like that's a price point. I know there's upside, but at 9K, is there legitimately upside on the DFS slate? Like that feels like a price point that is absolutely absurd from DraftKings.
No, I mean I still think that there is, and the reason is the minutes. McCollum, when Lillard is healthy, typically plays 37 to 38 minutes. We saw 2 games ago, McCollum play 43 and a half minutes in regulation. Against Boston in their last game, he played 37 and a half minutes, subbed out with 3 minutes to go, down by, the game was out of hand. So in competitive games, you're looking at about 40 minutes at least from CJ McCollum. He's averaged, going back a few years, because this year we only have a few games that Lillard has missed. Last year, he missed basically none. But if you go back to the start of the 2017-2018 season, you're at, I think it's 14 or 15 games that McCollum has played without Dame. And while the personnel on the Blazers isn't the same, the distribution of usage and stats and stuff is more or less similar, whether it's Whiteside or Nurkic or whoever at center. You're still talking about 1.25 to 1.3 DraftKings points per minute with about a 33% usage rate from McCollum. If you're getting 40 minutes of that, even at 9K in a tough matchup against Indiana, I think that it's a really high floor. So what it comes down to is, where's ownership going to be? And we saw on the last slate that Portland played on, it really wasn't that high on McCollum because I think people were kind of scared off by the price tag. If you're telling me that I can get someone that's going to average between 1.2 and 1.3 points per minute, and if the game's competitive is going to play 40 minutes, even at 9K, I'm more than happy to take on that upside if he's not going to be one of the more popular guys.
I dig that breakdown. I appreciate it, and it makes a lot of sense. What about the rest of the Trailblazers? Because you look, this is a short bench is the wrong way to describe it, but these starters played insane minutes the last game out. Do we expect more of the same here? And can you get some value out of a Carmelo, a Hassan Whiteside, a Gary Trent Jr. perhaps at, I think, 4,100 on DraftKings?
I think so, just because of how many minutes they play. Gary Trent Jr. at 4,100 is definitely someone to be aware of the ownership, because really, no matter who you put on or off the floor or what rates you look at for Gary Trent Jr., you're not going to get a median projection higher than like 2/3 of a point per minute. So even if you're looking at 34, let's call it 34 minutes from him at 4,100, you're not really looking at a slate breaking play. So if on a 4-game slate, everyone is just looking to Gary Trent for value, I think you can take some risks on some other value options, whether it's Anthony Simons as a pivot, Trevor Ariza as a pivot, or just getting away from the Blazers. But the minutes should be there for him. Trevor Ariza should play huge minutes. He's coming off 38 minutes. Again, had 3 minutes to go, so would have played about 40 or 41 minutes. The starters are just playing so many minutes, where I think McCollum's the priority, but Whiteside and Melo look like really good options as well. And then you kind of get some value plays where you're not confident in the per minute production, but you're still getting the minutes from Ariza and Trent.
Makes a ton of sense. And I think as we try to construct some lineups here, these minutes just make so much sense to not chase, but be well aware of in how this game might play out. And to point out, if I'm, let's see, it was back, February 23rd was their last game, right? If I'm reading correctly.
The Blazers?
Yeah.
No, it was yesterday, so the 25th.
Oh, okay. So what
against Boston?
Let's see. Oh, I'm looking at. Oh, got it. There. That's why. Let's see. Are they similar as we talk about it? Yeah. It's pretty insane. You did get Simons, as you said, cropping up to 20, but you're getting 37, 36, 37, 29 minutes in a game that, you said was a bit out of hand towards the end. There are just so many minutes and price points be damned to a certain extent. And I appreciate you breaking down McCollum the way you did, because it makes a lot of sense on how to look at this game. Sacramento, Oklahoma City is up next. A game, let's see, the line, 223 over under. Oklahoma City -6. I expected that to be about -8.5, -9, but we do have this contest as available on DK and across all the other apps. We'll talk about superdraft.io momentarily. Also, how you can get into awesemo.com for 50% off your first week of content. So we have some point guards and shooting guards eligible here who may have some upside. What do you make of this one from a Oklahoma City perspective? You have Chris Paul, you have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, whose price point is at 7,400. You have Dennis Schroeder, who's at 5,500. You throw into the mix some of these small forwards and power forwards like a Danilo Gallinari. What do you like from OKC?
I think that the main four look pretty good here in a decent matchup against Sacramento. Not the fastest team, but not the slowest, not a great defensive team. Price tags are about the same as where they were against the Bulls. Paul is about $100 less. Gilgeous-Alexander about $100 more. Gallinari came up, I think, $600 on DraftKings. But Dennis Schroeder at 5,500, I think, really stands out. You got a competitive game their last time out where he played 32 and a half minutes. I would expect similar run against Sacramento. They're not a big team. So I think that you probably can get the 3-guard lineup out there pretty easily for OKC to close it out. Gallinari, we talk about a lot, where I think Lofty mentioned the stat on the deeper dive yesterday that Gallinari does not have a single 50 fantasy point game this year. He's got several over 40, but he just is not a very volatile player. He has a high floor, he has a low ceiling, and so he's someone where when he comes in at this price point, if he's relatively low owned, I'm interested. But if the ownership's really high, then you're not really risking too much by pivoting to other players. Gilgeous-Alexander and Paul, I think both secondary options at their price point right now.
Pardon me if you did, but Steven Adams has been a rebounding machine on the year since I know a lot of people are crediting that he's not letting Russell Westbrook, he's not boxing out to let Westbrook get the triple doubles. But in this matchup at 6,800, I know center, you probably are considering obviously other options here, but is that a good price point for Adams on this sort of short slate?
It's a little high for me. With Adams, like he's back to playing his full minutes, which is good because we saw him kind of limited coming off of his injury for a while. But you're expecting 30 to 32 minutes from him here. At 6,800, I think it's still fine. Like he can still give you, 35 to 40 fantasy points, but it's just really tough for Steven Adams to get above that. He's not a high usage guy. He's reliant on obviously grabbing rebounds and getting putbacks and stuff. So it gets kind of tough for him to pay that off. I really think that Nerlens Noel at 3,300 is probably the better value. It'll be interesting to see where his ownership comes in, because it seems like people are kind of on that same thought process. The other night, there were a number of like $3,200 or $3,300 centers. There was Noel, there was Cantor, there was Plumlee. I think there might have been a couple other ones. Noel was like 18% owned, while guys like Cantor and Plumlee were 1%. So it kind of seems like people are maybe very aware of Noel's price and seeking that out. If that's going to be the case again, you can, just get away from Noel and then hope that he busts again. But if people are going to, shy away and go to other guys, I think that a point per minute player in Noel, who on average is going to play like 16 minutes, but if anything happens with Adams, like foul wise, gets more, then he looks like a pretty good value.
All right. What do we got from the Sacramento Kings? Hield, Fox, Bogdanovich. You can sort of go down the line of potential plays here. Clearly, they still have some problems in the front court with Bagley the third and Rashawn Holmes. It's always amazing that they have two different players on their team who are the third, between Harry Giles and Marvin Bagley, but I digress. What do you like, if anything, from Sacramento?
I think it's a pretty tough spot for them against OKC. De'Aaron Fox's salary is still really cheap. He's only $7,600. His usage has gone up since they replaced Buddy Hield with Bogdanovich. His per minute production has gone down. I think he is playing through some sort of injury, but at the same time, he gets so many opportunities. He's so cheap, and when he's not going to the locker room after 4 minutes like he did last game, he plays 33, 34 minutes. So I still think he looks pretty good. You can play the ownership game between guys like Buddy Hield, Bjelica, Bogdanovich, Barnes. Like, none of them are going to project great, but they all have the upside to do well.
So many Bs. It's insane.
Yeah.
It's insane. That makes sense. And I think we have other options at power forward and center that could stand out. Anything else to talk about before we close out the podcast with Lakers and Golden State?
Just one kind of note, I guess, is I mentioned when I talked about Nerlens Noel that it seems like people are kind of keying in on him as being underpriced. If that's the case on this slate, you have Alex Len at the same exact price and the same exact role with basically the same exact production. So there really should not be a drastic difference in ownership between Nerlens Noel and Alex Len. If there is, then you can look to Alex Len.
Don't forget, the future of daily fantasy sports has arrived. Experience Super Draft's exclusive game mode multiplier. Say goodbye to salary restrictions and hello to lineup freedom. Use your fantasy sports knowledge to draft any player you want and build your very own dream team. Countless lineup possibilities let you experience daily fantasy sports the way you want. Super Draft offers contests for NFL, MLB, NBA, NHL, and PGA, so you can enjoy the best of DFS all year round. Sign up for the Super Draft today using promo code AWESOMO and claim your free $20 in Super Cash with your first deposit of $100 or more. Download in the App Store or play at superdraft.io. Super Draft, no limits, more winning. At the day job, Adam, I multiple times today tried to send the word awesome to a coworker. Kept typing awesomeo every damn time. Can no longer type the word awesome. Thank you, Alex Baker, and your love for emo music, because that is why I am now not able to spell the word awesome. And, professionally, maybe awesome was not the response I should be sending, but nonetheless,
it's
frustrating.
Professional.
Yes, exactly right. Exactly right. We're going to close it out. Well, I should also remind you, if you're not yet a Awesomeo Premium Plus package, lots of P's there, but member, you can use the promo code EARLYBIRD, gets you 50% off your first week of Awesomeo Premium Plus weekly packages. Use that at checkout over at awesomeo.com and you get 50% off. And we'd love to have you behind the paywall. As always, don't forget, the first week you're there, you get unlimited direct messages to Adam and to Lofty. So just send them, just any questions you have, send them their way.
I definitely recommend sending the same one to Lofty you send to me, because I probably won't answer it and maybe he will.
Right. And then go to Josh and then go to Ben Rasa, then find Sal and then Alex, and then come to me because I'll answer them. But you don't want me answering them. So there's that. Baseball is coming, though.
To be fair, though, if you DM me in Slack, I'll answer you. DM me on Twitter, I have no interest in talking to you.
And let's also talk about the fact that DMing Adam at 6:57 when lock is 7, not a good idea. 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you may have a chance to get an answer there. So
best chance to get an answer is like between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m.
Is that the you up direct message? Or, hey, Adam, you up? I might be right now. Let's talk the final game of the night. Lakers, Golden State. As I said before, sort of contextually, it does matter. LeBron James out. So LeBron James is tending to a groin injury. Is that what we have here? Yes, his left groin is injured. I mean, I don't know that I would ever be able to discern between my left or right groin when my groin was injured, but bless these professional athletes who can do just that. So LeBron's out. AD has the Q tag, but he is probable for this contest. It is currently sitting with this news. Like typically LeBron's out, you're going to have a line off, right? You're going to wait till the next day and some things are going to get sorted out. I'm seeing this still at minus 13.5. So with LeBron in 17 and a half, like
that's pretty crazy. Like, I mean, I know they're still playing in California, but
I'm on a couple of different sites looking at it. I have 3 different books that have minus 13.5, 225 over under. So
yeah, no, I believe it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess it's probably one of those things where, like, when you're talking about going against a team like Golden State, whether you have one, as long as you have one of LeBron or Davis, the rest is just like overkill, I guess.
It makes some sense. It's just a bigger line than I would expect. Maybe it comes down as the day goes on. But AD is probable. If AD gets ruled out, obviously the proverbial shit hits the fan from a DFS and from a betting perspective. But let's take Golden State first, because I think this is a bit more intriguing. You have Wiggins at 7,200 as the sort of top dog for the Golden State Warriors. Marquise Chris is 5,900. Damian Lee, 5,400. These are some pieces that are at least decent price points. Do you give them enough upside, enough minutes to make them worthwhile here or not for Golden State?
I mean, it's tough because the matchup is really difficult. Golden State also just signed someone else to a 10-day deal. I don't even remember the name. It's some guy I've never heard of in my life, but with the way that they're running rotations, it wouldn't be surprising if he plays like 12 minutes or something. So it's just something to at least keep in mind. You have Draymond Green back. Golden State's probably the least appealing team on the slate in terms of, they're facing a good defense. They have a million bodies that, for the most part, played the same positions. And Steve Kerr is very willing at this point to just play all of them. So I don't think the Warriors as a team are that appealing. I think that if you were to look to any of them, it would be like, 32 minutes from Damian Lee. It would be around 32 minutes from like Jordan Poole or Marquise Chris. But overall, I think Golden State's probably the least appealing team on this slate.
Yeah, it sure feels like it. Like there's not a ton here to like. I'm sure you're playing 150 lineups. You can make some justifications around some of these pieces here, but not a ton that really stands out. What about from the Lakers' perspective? I have not taken a dive into numbers with LeBron off the floor and who you'd really prop up. I assume AD gets a ton of usage. I guess Kuzma at 3,900 could get some more minutes. You talk about a Danny Green or potentially a Caruso or Caldwell Pope. What do you got from a Lakers perspective?
So, I mean, Davis is obviously the first place you're going to go to. He's averaged 1.58 DraftKings points per minute without LeBron on the floor this year. He has a 34.5% usage rate over that time. Granted, those numbers are skewed a little bit because you're talking about potentially playing time against second units as opposed to just entire games. I'll have the numbers for the entire game in a second. But the first one I pulled up as far as just games that LeBron has missed, only 2 games this year, but Rajon Rondo has averaged 30 minutes per game. He's averaged 1.3 DraftKings points per minute. If you expect 28 to 30 minutes from him at only 3,500 with the ball in his hands a ton, which is clearly something that he doesn't get all the time when he's playing alongside of LeBron, he looks like probably the best value on the slate. Anthony Davis, only 1 game without LeBron this year. He had a 39% usage rate. But, basically the main takeaway here is that you have Davis at 10-3, you have Rondo at 3,500. They're the 2 guys that you go to the most. And with it only being a 4-game slate, I wouldn't be surprised at all if I have 100% of both of them.
All right. Anything to add from any of these 4 games or anything you consider as at least must know here so early on? Don't forget, NBA Strategy Show happens in the morning. That typically is around 9:15 over on our YouTube channel. We have the deeper dive. We have live before lock. Those are all free in front of the paywall over on YouTube. Anything else, Adam, you want to add in or chime in on before we say so long?
The only thing I would add is that the rest of the Lakers are going to be in obviously a little bit better spot without LeBron as well. And you have 7 of the normal rotation guys. That's not even including Quinn Cook and Troy Daniels, but 7 of the regular Lakers rotation guys that are sub 4K on DraftKings. And it's not including Rajon Rondo either because I already talked about him. So, when you talk about the Danny Green, Kyle Kuzma, KCP, Avery Bradley, Alex Caruso, like all of these guys, if you're playing 150 lineups, just mixing and matching these guys makes tons of sense.
All right. I would ask you our normal question, but if we look at this, LeBron is out, Embiid likely out, Lillard out. So let's say 8,800 and above.
Anthony Davis.
All right. That's fair. That's right. Like looking at it, it's because Simmons is out. Obviously, Steph Curry is out, though he is expected back relatively soon, I believe. Sunday, it's saying, according to Shams Charania, who I learned is 25 freaking years old the past couple of days.
Is he really?
What the F, Adam?
I assumed like
early 30s.
Right.
Like, yeah.
I still consider myself young. I'm 30.
Right.
When I think of someone that's like legitimately successful like that, and I think that they're young, I assume they're at least 35.
25.
That's nuts.
He started blogging at like 17. Like decisions were made in my life, Adam. I understand that, but
yeah.
Seeing that is,
I made decisions when I was 17 that I'm not even really that upset about, but they're not that successful.
There are stories to be told because of those decisions. We'll talk about those offline. But yes, Anthony Davis makes a ton of sense at the top end. Lots of injuries to consider here. Embiid should be out. LeBron is out. Lillard is out. Simmons is out. So this is going to be an intriguing slate. I do still think it's ugly. Like I do think legitimately these games can be out of hand. but it's going to be one that we're going to all have to consider how exactly to construct some lineups. So as always, you find Adam on Twitter at ShipMyMoneyDFS. You find him in Slack chat over at awesemo.com. But you also find him on FanDuel, DraftKings, winning some money in NHL. Let's have some fun. And also
the best ROI sport that I have.
There, just retire. Just let that ship sail. Find me on Twitter if you so choose. That is a challenge at Dan Strafford. And don't forget, Awesemo_com. We do have a giveaway still going on. If you leave a comment and a rating on the podcast, I will remind you a 5-star rating is the best. We did not stipulate it needed to be 5-star, but the work we do here is 5-star. It's 5-star. Let's be honest. So leave that. SJM again calling you out because you left a 3-star rating with the comment interesting. What does that even mean? But that's going on. Check out Awesemo_com on Twitter for more details around that and how you can enter for more free stuff from Awesemo.com. Tomorrow morning, Dave Lochran, also known as Lofty_D, LOUGHY_D, and myself right here on the DFS Early Bird presented by none other than Awesemo.com.